Patriots fall to the Bills in the wild card game 47-17, the worst playoff loss under Bill Belichick, second worst loss in Belichick era in the regular season and postseason as well. Welcome into post-game live presented by New England Ford dealers and Ford trucks. Michael, Holley, Tommy, Curran, Amina Smith here with you. And guys, we picked the Bills to win.
Yeah, but not like
I did not pick the Bills to win like that. I thought it was going to be a close game. I thought there would be a lot more in the run game for the Patriots. Holley, what happened out there?
Yeah, well, you know, I'm glad we have a lot of time tonight because we need a lot of time to really untangle and unpack this. Look, the Patriots did a lot of good work in October and November to really qualify to stack up some playoff victories. But they didn't belong in the playoffs. They didn't belong here. We saw what they did in the winter. This was just a continuation of what they had done in December and January. There was a clear difference between the playoff team and the playoff imposter. The Patriots had no answers for them. And it's really disappointing. Tommy Curran, we talked about it before the game. We said, if they lose this game, will it be a disappointment? And I thought failure was too harsh, but now I don't. Because now I have questions about the Patriots that I didn't have 6 weeks ago. So not only was it disappointing, I think the season winds up in a failure because we find ourselves in a familiar place with no answers where I thought they had some answers a month and a half ago.
I think tonight was a failure. I think it's going to color the entire offseason. I don't think that they are playoff imposters. I think that they played the schedule laid out for them. They put together some really impressive wins against what you would call the mediocre, the mid-level teams, but every time they got in with a good one, they got their posteriors handed to them, generally speaking. And tonight, this didn't surprise me that they got rolled over by the Bills. I thought the Bills would win convincingly. But to not force a punt, to have so many of your key players, again, on defense especially, come up little in a game of this import, for Bill Belichick to have no answers, Steve Belichick, Gerard Mayo, whoever's running whatever's being run over there, yeah, you could tip your hat to Josh Allen and say he's one of the three best players in the league and dynamic and unique in what he can do both with his legs and his arm in a way that others aren't. But there's no excuse for having 82 points on 14 possessions for 2 games with no punts against this team.
No resistance whatsoever. And by the way, saying they're playoff imposters, that sounds like a hot take, but it really isn't, because it continues this trend that we've talked about. So in 2019, they start off 8-0 against not only the mediocre, the bad. Okay, they just dominated the bad quarterbacks of the league. But then the second half of that year, those 8 games plus the playoff game, they were 4-5. By the time they got to Tennessee, they weren't a playoff team, even though they qualified for the playoffs. That was in 19. I think this team is the same thing. They qualify for the playoffs, but they haven't looked like a playoff team in a long time.
They're not an elite team. They're a long way from an elite team. They weren't an elite team in 2019. They lucked into being an elite team in some ways in 2018.
Right.
Look, they're 2017, so 18, 19, 20, 21, they're 4 seasons removed. They'll be 5 seasons removed from being a truly, upper echelon team. Remember the 2018 team won a Super Bowl. It was 11-5. They have a lot of questions to answer in this offseason. I know we're going to get into a ton of it, Amina.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you, Holley, when you talk about this Patriots team being a bit of imposters, because when people asked me before this matchup, how do you think it would turn out? I said, I don't think the Patriots can score enough points. I don't think they've been dominant enough this season on offense to really have a competition or a competitive game against the Bills. And we saw that tonight with the Bills putting up 47 points on this New England team. Let's bring in Matt Cassel right now. And Matt, you heard me talk about the 47 points that the Bills put up tonight. What was your biggest takeaway from this loss?
Well, I mean, wow. Just watching that game from start to finish, we're all sitting here going, are you serious right now? I mean, it was one of the most impressive performances by any quarterback I've watched in playoff in recent memory. I mean, Josh Allen, he was not only in a zone, he was in another hemisphere. Every throw that he made, it was accurate, especially the ones down the field. He did it with his arms, he did it with his legs, and we knew, look, coming in, that he was going to have a target on his back, but there was nothing that the New England Patriots did today to slow him down, to slow this offense. They were able to get the run game going. I mean, they never punted in this game. They only had 6 third downs, and all those possessions and all all those long drives that they had 6 third downs. What does that tell me? They won on first and second down. The New England Patriots defensive line could not create any pressure. When they did have opportunities to tackle in open space, they couldn't tackle. I mean, they had everything going for them offensively for the Buffalo Bills, and they had no way to stop it. And after that first possession where you say, oh, well, look, New England's, we're moving the ball a little bit. Mac Jones made some plays outside the pocket, and then the interception by Micah Hyde on that incredible catch by him. I thought it was a well-thrown ball, but I'm telling you, it was all Bills, and it was an impressive victory by them.
Matt, I want to ask you this. Now, not excuse-making for the Patriots, but with the Buffalo Bills and the recent history and the long-term history that they've had, were they able to apply a beating to the Patriots tonight because of Josh Allen? Say the Patriots were in against the Bengals or the Chiefs even, or the Titans. They wouldn't have gotten pantsed like this. But I think that there is an agitation level. Do you think that Josh Allen, and the way he plays against the Patriots right now, is at such a level that he can make them look a lot worse than they are, or are they this bad?
100%. That one player right there made them look like a JV squad. Why? I mean, you go back to the first touchdown pass. He was able to hold the ball by himself times. It was almost 10 seconds of the play after the snap where he's holding on the ball, trying to find something, and then drops it in the bucket to Knox in the back of the end zone. The second touchdown pass, the strike that he threw from inside the pocket was just an absolute laser. But here's the first play right here. No pass rush. You're rushing 2, trying to get guys into coverage. It's almost 10 seconds, I'm telling you. And then he drops it in the back.
Oof.
I mean,
Wow.
he just has a skill. He's got a skill set that is so unique, and he's very comfortable in this system. He's had the same coordinator with Brian Daboll his entire time. They've been able to groom him, continue him to grow, and he has confidence in making these type of plays.
So is
and
he particularly suited to kill the Patriots, or could anyone have done this to this team?
I don't think anyone can just do that to this team, especially the way that he performed today. I mean, he was 21 for 25 for over 300 yards. He ran the ball effectively. He had 5 touchdown passes. He was in his zone. And even on the deep passes, what was most impressive to me was his eye control. He knew McCourty was a guy that had range in the middle of the field. And if you go back and watch some of those replays, it was amazing. He'd look one way, look the other way, just to make sure McCourty didn't jump it, and then throw the go route to Stephon Diggs down the sideline there over J.C. Jackson. Then on the 2-on-1 call where he hit Emmanuel Sanders on that big touchdown pass, he knew exactly what he wanted to do. He got that safety to go inside on the inside seam and worked outside. It was a 2-on-1. He saw the field beautifully today. He knew exactly where he wanted to go with the ball. And when it wasn't there immediately, guess what? He took the check down, and he did what he needed to do there. He never forced the ball into coverage. I mean, it was a near perfect performance, and that's hard to do in this league.
Near perfect performance from a guy who I think is Buffalo's biggest superstar in 30 years. And like since the Thurman Thomas, Jim Kelly, Bruce Smith, he's got the skills and the personality. Like, he's embraced the city has embraced him, and he's putting up big time performances. So I'm going to give all the credit to him. I'm going to give most of the credit to him. But I do want to say, Curran, to answer your question, he's great. And he is able to make a bad team look worse. See, the Patriots, down the stretch, became a bad football team. I would say, as we were looking at it, out of the 14 teams in the playoffs, and now I thought right after they lost to Miami, I said, okay, out of the 14, they might be number 12, 13, 14. Out of both conferences.
Which is what the seeding would indicate in the record.
Right, which they didn't look like they were just up to it. They weren't up for the challenge.
Agreed.
And then tonight, they don't have anything for Josh Allen.
Right.
So it's one thing to say, hey, maybe they need to rebuild their team around it. No, they just need to have, he exposes all the things where they really struggle.
So that's my question.
All the areas where they really
when you're
struggle.
Digesting a 47-17 loss, and you see a team that doesn't punt again against you, and you have put everything into this, and you've seen a decline in the last month, do you say, we're just not good enough, we almost have to start from scratch, or you say, okay, this is a horrible matchup for us, we have to figure out how to beat that player and that team, but we're not nearly as bad as we were? Because it's really, the Patriots are going to be caught betwixt and between. Are they a good team that rebuilt sufficiently and just had to add a few more pieces? Or are they defensively, especially defensively, in a place where they might need to do a teardown? I mean, J.C. Jackson's a free agent. Devin McCourty's an older player. Dante Hightower's obviously an older player. Kyle Van Noy's an older player. There's a lot of players here who we thought were high-level, big-game players that were part of a 47-17 loss to them.
But okay, can I answer that? Just briefly try to answer that question. I would go right into linebacker. So I started linebacker.
Right,
because,
absolutely.
You know what? Because Cassel, I look at it and say, Dante Hightower, over the years, his cap number has risen, his play has decreased. So that's Hightower. Yes. And then you look at Kyle Van Noy, who's the star of Quick Slants. I'm just kidding. But Kyle Van Noy, a contributor on Quick Slants, a good player, but a player you probably want to upgrade from him. So they're big.
Adding Jamie Collins.
And then even, Matthew Judon.
Right.
I'll say this.
Right.
All pro at the microphone, right? Especially his Thanksgiving take. A Pro Bowler for 3/4 of the season and a no-show when winter hit. So, and he's going to be 30. So you've really got that area right there, I think, Cassel, tells you a lot about the team and some of the defensive weaknesses.
Well, it was very evident tonight. They just did not have any speed at that linebacking position, and we saw it throughout the end of the season. They couldn't create a pass rush against opposing offenses, and they just lacked speed, and you saw it. They got exposed. They used McKenzie on those speed sweeps, and they had no answer for it because they could not get to the edge. They could not catch up, and that's what it was. And it also, in some of those crossing routes, I mean, Knox ran right by Bentley on a crossing route, and he just could not catch up. They're built to stop the run, but when a team spreads you out like the Buffalo Bills did tonight, and 11 personnel all night long, they've got the 3 wide receiver sets. Well, now you've got matchup issues on the interior part of the defense, and that's really where this team's lacking, is just overall team speed on the second level at the linebacker position, and also creating some form of a pass rush with the interior guys. They're big, they're physical, but they just lack that explosiveness that you have to have against a team like this.
We've touched on this, but Holley, I want to get your take on this. How much of this game and what the Bills were able to do, putting up 47 points, was sending a message to the Patriots that they're not at the top of the AFC East anymore, that the Bills are actually there to stay? Because I feel like the Bills, they've heard all the talk. They've heard all about the New England Patriots and how they've really dominated them for so long. And now the Bills are stepping up and saying, hey, no, we're at the top of the AFC East and we deserve the respect.
Part of this was a reckoning. I really do. It was, and I think the trigger word from the December game, the first December game, was embarrassing. You know, Micah Hyde was asked that question, and it was an accurate assessment by Jerry Sullivan. Hey, is this embarrassing? And so they really were offended by that. But this was embarrassing and accurate from the Patriots side. So I think it was a reckoning for Buffalo, and it was almost like Buffalo was a proxy for all those AFC East teams the last decade and a half that have really taken a whipping from New England. They're like, oh, thank you. So thank you, Buffalo, for doing our work for us. We can't stand the success of the Patriots. We can't stand the arrogance of the Patriots. Finally put it on them. All that being said, Tom, I still don't think Buffalo is that good. They were that good against New England.
What?
I don't.
Yeah,
Wait a minute.
I told you beforehand.
That's an interesting statement.
Okay, but guys, the numbers.
But the bottom line is Buffalo
did
revel in doing this.
Sure, but don't we have to address the numbers, though? Don't we have to address the facts?
That's for next week.
No, we're not going to be here next week. We're not going to be here next week.
Here's what Buffalo does. This is a post-game show of the Patriots Bills.
I'm asking,
autopsy on them.
I care because she's saying, she asked me about Buffalo and New England. This tells you about New England and Buffalo. Buffalo, the fact that they're not that good and they're able to do that.
They are good, Mike.
They're not Mike. Tom, they have beaten 3 playoff teams this year, 2 of them against the Patriots, 2 wins against the Patriots.
They lost to the Jaguars.
They lost. Okay. So they got 12 wins, 2 against playoff teams.
I don't want to interrupt, so I'm going to give you but I got to at some point say, you can't watch what they did to the Patriots tonight, what they did to the Patriots in the last meeting, a team that was 9-4, a team that had competed, and say it's not a good team. I mean, they have We could talk about Lamar
Watched them
Jackson
all
and
year,
Patrick
Tom.
Mahomes.
I watched them all year.
We could talk about Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes and Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady. None of them can do what Josh Allen does. He's a power runner with speed who could play running back. He also throws better than Lamar Jackson, so he runs better than Mahomes. He runs better than Rodgers. He runs better than Brady. He is a complete unicorn. There's no one like him in the NFL. And the Patriots, to resume any kind of chance at having supremacy in the AFC East, have got to find an antidote to him. I think you're overstating it. I got to pin you down. You think they're not good?
I think they played.
Yeah.
They played playoff teams this year, and they won 2 games against playoff teams.
They just won another one.
But they can't control the schedule. They can't control the schedule.
Okay, but yes,
I mean, that's the truth of the
can't-
matter.
They can't
just
control
beat a
the
playoff
schedule.
team by
But
30.
if they play playoff teams and they lose to playoff teams,
They just beat one.
I'm not supposed to. Well, kind of.
So Holley is saying because the
No.
Patriots at the bottom of the playoffs, that it's not qualifying as beating a good playoff team. Is that basically what you're getting at?
They have 12 wins this year.
Right.
Okay, so the playoff teams they've beaten this year, Kansas City early in the year, and the Patriots twice. That's a fact. So why am I supposed to say, so that's out of those 12 wins, if you get 3 of them against playoff teams, is that good?
So Buffalo's not that great.
But
New England's
they won
worse.
by 30.
Because New England's a bad team,
So are
Tom.
they just as bad as they were
Let-
last
let go-
January?
Matt, go ahead,
Matt's
go ahead,
starting
Matt.
to get in from Nashville.
I was just going to say, but when you also look at the Buffalo Bills, look, they lost the game against the Tennessee Titans when it's one of those plays. It was 4th and 1 on the 5-yard line. They're going in to score, and they made a miraculous play to stop them on a quarterback sneak that if you did it 20 more times, they wouldn't be able to stop Josh Allen. But they did. They made a huge stop, Tennessee Titans, and they're the #1 team in the AFC East, and the Buffalo Bills should have won that game. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, yes, they were losing big, but they came back and went to overtime with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You're telling me those 2 teams that are the topper echelon of the conference, they played them to the wire. And I'm not saying that they're the greatest team, but look, with the components that they have offensively, the weapons that they have on the perimeter, Josh Allen alone, this is a good football team. And defensively, yes, they're a good defense as well. They're littered with talent on the defensive front. The second level is as good as it's been. They've got a veteran group on the back end with good coaching all around. How can you sit here with an honest face and just say, well, because they lost to a few of these playoff teams, that this is not a good team? This is a very good football team that can go deep in the playoffs. They went to the AFC Championship game last year. They can't control their schedule and who they put in front of them and who they beat up on.
Now,
the fact of the matter is, this team is a good team.
I can play that game all day. I can say the same thing. Hey, the Patriots, barely lost to Tampa Bay by 2 points. If the guy had made a 56-yard field goal, they would have beat Tampa Bay. Hey, the Patriots lost in overtime to Dallas. We can play the if an if was a fifth, we'd all be drunk. So what?
But I
so
feel
what?
like
They almost won. Nobody does that.
But
Nobody
we're
gives
gonna
you
find
credit
out
for that.
whether or not they're legitimately
so you
good or
honestly don't
legitimately
think this is a
bad.
good team?
I don't. I don't.
So the Patriots just lost by 30 to a not good team.
Right.
And they
They're not
lost
good.
by 12 a couple weeks ago. So the Patriots aren't good. So we sat here trumpeting the Patriots
They've gotten
for
worse,
the last
Tom.
20 weeks.
Like, don't try to pin me down and say, if I said the Patriots were good in October,
All right.
I got to stick with that. I go by what I see. So they were playing good football. They won 7 games in a row. They were 9-4. They looked good. They were consistent. They were reliable. And then they collapsed after the bye. There's a story there. I don't know what the story is.
After they lose a
changed.
game like this, you have to wonder, how steep is the hill that they have to climb to get to a point where you're not going to get embarrassed in the playoffs? They're not a Super Bowl team. They're not an elite team. We could agree on that easily. But I guess my question is, after we watch this, is how steep is the climb to get back to a competitive playoff team?